Welcome to Journey Church. My name is Jamie. I'm one of the pastors here. We got folks still looking for seats, so if you don't mind either squeezing in a little bit or put your hands up and tell us how many seats are next to you. So yeah, if you got however many seats are there, we got a bunch of one seats. We got three. Well, we got some moving over, so we got some more right here. There's a nice 4 right here. Good, beautiful. This is a unique Sunday. We're kind of wedged in between Mother's Day and Memorial Day. And by the way, next week, we have a big celebration here. Kevin's going to give you the details, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We're doing a quick kind of gathering right off the top end. We're going to have baptisms. We're going to tell some stories, and we're going to have really our formal dedication of this land and the building, and we're going to put the tent up, and we're going to eat food, and we're going to party. So it's going to be a lot of fun next week. Again, Kevin will give you those details, so we look forward to that. But today we kind of had this one-off Sunday. And I've had this kind of parked for a while, like, when can I do this teaching on human interaction, using Scripture as a reflection, but then doing a real practical piece on how we relate to one another. So this kind of seemed to be the perfect Sunday. So today's a little different. It's going to be a little more of like a college class, not hopefully not deep, but a little bit more kind of in that kind of a teaching vein. And we're also going to do questions and answers. So Kevin is down here in the front and has a microphone. So if there's a voice, it's not God, it's Kevin. Though sometimes we get them confused around here. But Kevin's our executive pastor and also one of our teaching pastors. So Kevin, you can send the text into him, and after we get through this, I'll get through a little bit of it, and then we'll just kind of jump in. Or who knows, Kevin might just interrupt, and we'll get to it sooner. Our passage, Matthew chapter 16, and I'm going to begin reading in verse 21. Quick context. Jesus is been in the throes of his ministry, and he's about to kind of embark on the back half, which means he's heading toward Jerusalem, and Jesus knows there is a great deal of suffering ahead for him. He knows what that final week is going to be like. He is aware that he is on a mission, and there's going to be great pain. And so he begins to break this down for his followers, and there's an interaction that happens that is a wonderful display for a display for human interaction that goes south. We're going to see a healthy display, and we're going to see an unhealthy. Jesus, of course, showing us the healthy one, and that wonderful man, Peter, who does such a wonderful job of modeling for us how to be unhealthy with one another. But it's not just Peter. I pick on Peter sometimes, but I mean, throughout Scripture, we could go all the way back to Adam and Eve. We can get into the story of David, but over and over again, this is a story of human beings. So guess what human beings do? They have these wonderful moments, but they also have lots of ways of unhealthily relating, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So let's get into the story. Verse 21, from that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life. So he's teaching this, and just picture the interaction. Peter, who, by the way, just about a chapter earlier has been told he's going to be like one of the major leaders in the church. He even gets a new name and all this kind of thing. So Peter's feeling a little empowered about his leadership role. Jesus shares that he's going to go suffer, and Peter goes, whoa, 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 Jesus. Come. We got to talk for just a second. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. So here's a guy with a lack of awareness. Peter begins to rebuke Jesus, and he says, never, Lord, which is a kind of an interesting juxtaposition. Never, God. I'm telling God never. Anyway, never, Lord, he said, this will never happen to you. You do not need to suffer. I don't want you to suffer. You can't suffer because I have an agenda for your life. By the way, these folks like that, people who we're gonna find this is kind of classic codependency. We're gonna use the word rescuer for today's conversation. But people who are rescuers, they don't like other people to suffer because they want to come to the rescue. They want, and you go, well, it's good to rescue people, right? Depends on where it comes from. If the rescuing is really just about removing the tension for that person, in many ways it's often just really about removing their own tension. There's really a payoff for them. Peter has a different plan for Jesus, so he doesn't want him to suffer because it's going to thwart his plan. He also doesn't like the idea of Jesus being uncomfortable and in pain because that would put him in pain. So the truth is, it's really less about Jesus' pain, it's more about his own. Jesus responds. Jesus turns to Peter and says, "Get behind me, Satan." Now that's kind of a strong response. I don't know how often people have responded that way with you, but that's a pretty intense response to someone who sent, because again, if you read this kind of at surface level, doesn't that sound nice? Peter just loves Jesus. Oh, I don't want you to suffer. It sounds really loving and admirable. And then Jesus calls him Satan. What's happening here? It's because if you look underneath, you see what's really happening in this interplay. And then Jesus says, "You are a stumbling block to me." It kind of feels like Jesus, and I'm going to give you an unhealthy way of relating and then a healthy way of relating. But Jesus is displaying a healthy way of relating, but he immediately sets a boundary with Peter. And then it's almost, the way I hear it in Jesus' voice, there's almost, I don't know if it's gentle, but there's almost something, I feel the emotion in the second statement. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men. Now, if you remember, it isn't long after that Jesus goes into a garden, asks his friends to come and pray with him, and he prays with such intensity that he's sweating drops of blood, saying, "God, is there another way?" So when Peter says, whoa, you don't need to suffer, you can imagine that in Jesus' humanity, it was such a temptation to go, yes, you're right, I don't need to, I don't want to. There's got to be a better way. Peter, in what appears to be his good intentions, which I would submit are not good intentions, but his own codependency, but Peter is actually trying to enable Jesus and tempt him away from God's path for his life. And unfortunately, when we get lost in the rescuer, sometimes we're actually preventing the very tension that God has placed there. So let's go to it. Let me give you this triangle. It's called the relational triangle. It's also been called the drama triangle. And it's an unhealthy way of relating. So this is the unhealthy example. The first, at one corner, you see the victim. At the top, we'll put rescuer, and then in the corner, we'll put perpetrator. You could also say persecutor or offender. A lot of times this starts, it can really start anywhere, but a lot of times it starts with the victim. The victim sends out signals, almost like pheromones, like looking for someone who would come and rescue them. And let me give you an example of how that might happen. A victim, for instance, it talks about how awful things are. And here's the thing about the victim. If you run into a victim, everything is catastrophic all the time. And it's all been done to them. How are you? Oh, I just got off the phone with my mother. Oh my gosh, my mother. And I can't believe this presidency. And I can't believe this government. And you're not going to believe the job I have. And what my boss said to me the other day. And the way people in the South are. Oh my gosh, when I was in Michigan, people were like this. And you're not going to believe. And on and on and on. And they go. Now what they're doing is they're casting a picture of a fishing rod here. They're casting a. And they're looking for a rescuer. And here's how you know if they hit one. Because if they start rolling into their victimization, oh my gosh, and they throw out the hook and the hook bounces off somebody, that's the guy who's like, yeah, okay, see ya. You're like, well, that guy he doesn't even care about me at all. Right? He wouldn't get hooked, and you're angry. By the way, sometimes the victim gets so angry, they slide over to perpetrator. That guy's such a jerk, stupid idiot, can't even want to listen to me. Boom, over there to perpetrator. Why? Because they couldn't hook the person they wanted to. Now, who are they looking to hook? The rescuer. Hi, I'm Jamie. That's where you go. Hi, Jamie. Hi, nice to meet you. That's the place I spend a lot of time at that one. I've been unpacking that for a few years. So the rescuer, this is what the victim's looking for. And they go, oh, life is so bad. And so the rescuer is like a golden retriever, like, bing, like, really? What happened? Oh, well, Oh, well, how can I help you? Let me see if I can rearrange my life and crush my soul on your behalf. If you're a rescuer, this is what happens in microseconds. I get an email and I'm like, I gotta save, I gotta rescue, It's the sick thing that comes up in us, and the victim's like, yes, I got a big one here. And you can stay in this dance. Now, sometimes this even happens like in a systemic situation. So let me give you an example where this can happen in a church, for instance. Somebody says to the church, hey, we really need help serving, volunteering. We need help with the children's ministry. And a rescuer goes, well, they need help, and it sounds like they're desperate. And a rescuer might wait a little while till it's desperate, because if it's desperate, it's a little funner for the rescuer. So, like, we're really hurting. Oh, now that's me. So they go, hey, I can serve. What do you need me to do? Well, can you help with the kids and do that? Oh, actually, I've got 40 years of children's ministry. I'm just waiting for someone to ask me. And, oh, great, okay. And so they come, let's say they serve in the first gathering, and they finish serving the first one. And by the way, rescuers have huge antenna for needs, so we're really aware. So about to exit to maybe go to sit in here for the gathering. And they're on their way out, they're like, looks like there's not a lot of adults in here. You guys good? Are you okay? And maybe the leader goes, honestly, we could use one more. Well, I'll just stay for this one. That's not a problem. You need somebody for the second time around? Yeah, okay, good. And then it feeds it if the person's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I don't know what we've done without you. No problem. And the cape is flowing in the wind. And then it's time for the third gathering. The family's going to go meet up, and they're walking out, and they're like, and now the leader has already found out this person loves to rescue, and they don't know this subconsciously, but they go, we really could use you for this one too. And the person goes, really? Well, let me text my wife and tell her I won't be in the gathering with her because you need help. And then and of course the wife who's been married to the rescuer is like, well, there he goes again. The wife in that opportunity right there, she gets the text and she can go to victim. She might even have a child next to her. What's that? I just got a text from your father. I guess we're going to be in the gathering alone again. So you can see where it could go to victim, or it could go to perpetrator. What's the text from? The idiot we call your dad. Okay. Quick perpetration. And so then dad stays in. He helps again. And then this happens for weeks and months. And then one day, the rescuer, he gets tired, burnt out. And he goes to coffee with somebody. And they sit at coffee. They go, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just getting over my burnout at the church. Really? What happened? Church used me. Just used me. What, really? Oh my gosh. They wanted me there like all three gatherings, week after week. No appreciation. Really? Yeah, I'm not going to go to church again. Christians, are you kidding me? And God. What happened? He left rescue and went to perpetrator and victim. And he's bouncing around back and forth in the coffee. He's literally like victim, perpetrator. Well, what are you going to do? Well, there's probably another church that needs me somewhere. There goes a rescuer. Like you see how sick it gets. This happens all the time. It doesn't just happen systemically. It doesn't just happen interrelationally. It can even happen in an interdialogue. So, for instance, you turn 47, you're like, I really got to get to the gym more. And you go, but you know what? I mean, the fact is, there's a lot going on. I mean, I got 4 kids, and I mean, honestly, I don't know how many gets to the gym. If you're 47, you got a 6-pack, you got issues. That's really, you're lazy and you don't work. That's the only way you could work out that much. Or if you're a lady, maybe you go, oh, I've had 4 kids. I mean, of course I can't get at this rate. I mean, and everybody has all these expectations of me and the commercials, and that's the message they're sending to women anyway. You're just a victim. And then what happens? Inner dialogue. I need to do something. I was watching that DirecTV like on channel 4059, and there's a pill apparently that if I take it, it'll draw just so I can lose 20 pounds in a day, and I'm going to try and take that pill. And I'm going to get back to the gym too. I just picked up a new book on that, and some celebrity wrote a really neat thing about just eating celery, and I'm going to, if I do that, I'm going to eat celery and go to the gym and take the pill. And so for 3 days, you eat celery, you eat the pill, and you go to the gym. But then on the 4th day, one of your kids was home puking, so you couldn't make it to the gym. And then something happened with the work situation, and then like 4 days go by. Then you don't really want to go on the 5th day. You try and rescue yourself. What happens? Well, inner dialogue. You have no discipline. You can't follow through. You have major commitment problems. You perpetrate yourself. And it just doesn't happen. I'm giving you the weight thing, but it can happen with lust. It can happen with jealousy. You're one interaction on Facebook, and you might bounce around these 3 things. It's the unhealthy way of relating. It happens all the time. If you were to put something in the center of this thing, if you're like, Jamie, what's the overview? The overview is we relate like this to avoid responsibility. This is really happening. To avoid responsibility. It's a form of manipulating. Now, here's the thing. You can live a lifetime on that triangle. Do you want to know why? I told you it was called the relationship triangle. It's also called the drama triangle. Because it fills the space. You can sit in one of those roles and you can always find someone who will dance with you on that thing. And when you stay distracted, avoiding taking any responsibility for yourself, guess what you get to avoid? Any internal work. You get to avoid listening to the Spirit of God. You get to avoid examining your own heart. All those passages in the Psalms where David's saying, create in me a clean heart, examine my heart, check my motives. All those moments when you're in contemplation and meditation, if you stay in the red triangle, you just skip those. Because if you actually go inward, it will disrupt this. It's one of the reasons, by the way, not today, but it's one of the reasons on most of our Sundays we have this, 3 or 4 songs at the back end of our gathering and we say, would you just sit quietly before God? What we're trying to do is disrupt and agitate long enough that you'd step out of that triangle or at least pull the lens back and go, God, where am I with you? Are we right? Now let me give you an example of what it looks like when you actually get into a healthy way of relating. We call this the green triangle, and it's inverted. So the first is ownership, the second is negotiation, and the third are boundaries. Now you watch Jesus set the example in his interaction with Peter here, and I could go on and on. This happens all the time with Jesus. You could see this interaction take place. We could start all the way in the beginning. Adam and Eve, what happens with Adam and Eve? They're victims, they blame it on, she blames it on, Adam blames it on the wife blames it on Satan, the serpent. So you just see it all the way, patterns throughout Scripture. Jesus gives us an example where he immediately sets a boundary. He says, Peter, stop. Stop trying to enable. Stop trying to tell me I'm going to live according to a path that's different than God. Stop. He sets a boundary. He says no. Next thing he does is he takes ownership. Hey, this is causing me, if I were to give in to this, it would cause me to stumble. So I'm taking, no, this is me. I'm kind of doing a check-in with me. And here's my path. Here's my boundary. Here's an example of what this could look like. Somebody asks you for something. They ask for your time. They ask you to get together. Let's say you get a text from somebody, and they go, you get a text, and the thing pops up in your thing. My husband is a moron, and I need someone to vent with. Can you meet me at 3:00 for coffee? Or my wife is neurotic, and I gotta talk to somebody. Can you meet me at 3? And the text comes up. If you're a rescuer and you haven't done any work, the first thought is, I have to clear my schedule. I have to do whatever I can because my friend is in need. You feel, I'm telling you, those of us who are rescuers, we have that kind of compulsion. Oh, he needs me. I got to come to the rescue. This happens, by the way, in parenting. The child comes home and, the teacher said, that teacher, what happened? I'm sending it. Well, hold on, I'll get there tomorrow. And then you get with the teacher, and then the teacher's like, well, that was after your kid took a marker and wrote up and down the back of the girl's neck. And all right. But you feel like this compulsion that comes up. The healthy thing, text comes up, is first you do this check-in. Is internal check-in, which is really, it's checking in with the Spirit of God. It's listening. We use phrases like aligning with the kingdom, tuning in to the will of God. It's just checking in. So the will of God is just not always what job you're going to maintain for a lifetime. The will of God is in microseconds. Jesus gave you an example. Hey, don't tell me not to suffer. I'm on a different path. I'm actually meant to. Don't prevent me from it. So right here, you check in and you go, let's say I'm a rescuer. This actually wouldn't be healthy for me because this is actually tagging me. I feel triggered in this. And so I think I'm going to set a boundary and say, I'm not available right now. Now, that, depending on how close you are with the person, they could get flipped, and they could be so angry with you because they expected you to be there because you had been for the last 24 years. and they send you a text back. Are you kidding me? You can't make time for me right now? No, I'm sorry, I'm not available. You're such a jerk. All I need is somebody to talk to. You're never there when I need you. You see how quickly that person might get spun, and now you're like, oh, am I a jerk? No, I'm just going to maintain the boundary. And if you're a rescuer, literally, it's like an addiction. So you might have to be like, no, I'm going to have to give my energy, think about something else, because you got hooked into the thing. Now, if you're healthy, by the way, and you get that text, hey, I'm spun out, I'm angry, I'm done, and you're healthy, and you go, you know what, I've got a meeting at 3, but I can meet at 4. So you text back up. You're negotiating. There's little moments like this in marriages all the time. Somebody gets up, and sometimes it's just benign, like it's neutral, and we can get tripped up. I'll give you one last example of the negative. You get up in the morning, you go, somebody opens up the pantry door, and they go, oh, Lucky Charms. What does the victim say? I never do it right, do I? I go to the store. I thought you wanted Lucky Charms. I just can't ever get it right. There's nothing I can get right. I don't know why we even got married. And by the way, it could be totally neutral. The guy was just like, I just said Lucky Charms. All right? If he says Lucky Charms and it hits the rescuer's like, oh, yeah, I know, I forgot you don't like Lucky Charms. You like Fruit Loops better. I'm going to run to the store. Let me grab my wallet. I'll just run up to the store. I'll quickly get some, because I want to make sure you have. Oh, because you like Fruit Loops. Is Fruit Loops or Apple Jacks? I want to make sure I get the one. I'll buy both. Never mind. I'll buy all 3. I'll be back in 5 minutes. I'm so fast at driving. It's just up the road. Okay. Perpetrator. Lucky Charms? Next time, buy your own dang Lucky Charms. That's why Susie's not telling the story. I had to make sure I filtered. And the guy's like, and what if it's been, he's like, I actually really like Lucky Charms. I just was noticing it was in there. And if you're on the red triangle, this is what's kind of crazy. I was going to say funny, but in a way it's kind of sick. If you're on the red triangle and the person really says that, they're like, it was totally neutral. They're like, I was just saying there's Lucky Charms in there. They can switch to another deal. Like, let's say they were permanent. Get your own dang Lucky Charms. I was just saying we Lucky Charms. Oh, all right. So I got a problem with my patience. And then they can go to rescue. You just see how it bounces all over the place. To move into to the green triangle, which looks blue up there, ownership, negotiating boundaries is all about empathy. So right in the center of that thing, empathy. Empathy is looking through their lens. My wife has helped me a great deal with this because she's studied the Enneagram a lot. Oh, gosh. Oh, sorry. Well, if God was telling us something. Thank you. Kevin was going to rescue me. Just empathize, hold the space. Thank you. Angie's helped me with this a lot. If you've done any work like with personalities or Enneagram or any of that stuff, if you look through the lens of someone else's personality, if you can go, can I borrow those goggles quick? Well, because you're an 8 or if you're in the disc profile, well, you kind of look at things through the lens of an I or whatever. But if you kind of know a pattern for people's personality, you go, can I borrow those lenses? And you look through and go, oh, that's how an 8 sees the world. You're able to then, in the green, just kind of go, oh, yeah, I could see how you'd feel that way. Now, I wouldn't necessarily take the same approach, but I can see how there's empathy. But you're not perpetrating going, what are you saying? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, you're not, because sometimes they're micro-perpetrations, too. Or you're not on the rescuer thing, where someone goes, oh, I can't believe that, and you're like, oh, I'll fix it. No, let me, I'll fix it. And if you pay attention, you can see how quickly you can leave the unhealthy and go to the healthy. We were praying together, a handful of us yesterday, and in the prayer time, one of the guys was praying, and it was emotional, and there was a sadness, and he was just talking about longing for a mentor, and there were several other things in his life, and I could just feel it pinging my rescuer while we were praying together. And I want to be like, oh, I'll be your mentor. Like, what else can I, and there were several other things he prayed for. Like, I wonder if I could fix that. I mean, if I could help him with that. And as he was praying, I was like, oh, I just got dinged. And I went, no, what I feel, that empathy is real and healthy, by the way. I feel sad for him. Might even sometimes with tears come to my eyes. And that's his journey. Lord, help him find a mentor without my help. Because I got pinged, am I unhealthy? Now, if I was healthy, I might go, yeah, checking in. I think I got time for that. If he's interested, I could do that. Or, God, maybe I could help connect him with someone. But you see the difference? Like, somebody was just praying, and I felt that thing come up. So to check in and see where you are. Now, you might go, well, and here we got some time for some questions. So if you got some questions, start texting them to Kevin. But let me give you this. Here's, if you go, okay, yes, I get stuck on the road at times, or actually I've built a log cabin there, and I've lived there for a lot of years. Whatever the thing is, how do I get to the green? Here's how, let me give you kind of this is how you get there. Because it happens, there are a number of different ways, but this is the primary way to get into this healthy place. And I'm really following many of the passages in Scripture, in particular in the Psalms, when it talks about entering into a season of worship. Worship is giving our attention to God, and it's basically saying, you're God, not someone else. Red Triangle is all about idolatry. I need you to be my little g God. My husband, my wife, my father, my kids. And then the moment they don't perform like the God you want them to be, you'll move to one of those places. The healthy way, and one of the Psalms that talks about entering his gates with thanksgiving, is a great example of over and over and over again, we're meant to lean into our faith with gratitude. So here it is. Gratitude and celebration push us toward the green. Why? Because most of that starts with a victimization. Not all the time, but most of it starts. Even the perpetrator, they tend to get triggered by a victim. Perpetrators and victims, that can be entertaining. Put a victim near a perpetrator. Oh my gosh, life is, the perpetrator sure is, and you're contributing to how awful our life is. You know, like, the victim is like, whoa, that's not what I was looking for. Is there a rescuer nearby? But typically the victim is tripping the whole system. And if you lead with gratitude, here's what happens. You go, I'm really thankful. How are you? I'm really grateful. For what? And if you have a victim nature proclivity, and you go, oh, this is going to be hard for me. How's the job? And immediately, in microseconds, 10 terrible things about your job leapt to your brain. And you have a narrative around all 10. And they go, how's your job? And you go, I really like Franklin, Tennessee. Yes, that's where my job is. Okay. Well, how is it? I'm really glad I have a job. What's wrong with your face? I'm trying to practice gratitude. Because this will happen, I promise you, if you have that victim thing, like, it will be painful for you. People are going to think, what's wrong with you? Because you're suppressing all the natural thing that wants to come up to talk about how terrible life is for you. But if you'll start with gratitude, and then when you speaking out is a form of celebrating it. You go, hey, I'm really grateful I have a job. The other person might even be like, well, that's a good point. I didn't even think about the fact that, just the fact that we have a job, that's a good thing, right? Uh-huh, it's good. It's really good. Can I go now? Gratitude and celebration pushes toward the green. Practicing gratitude increases grace. If you'll begin to do this repeatedly, pretty soon, out of a spirit of gratitude, you start to line up all the things you're thankful for. You can't help it. Eventually you go, well, I didn't control all this, so there's a lot of goodness in my life, and I didn't make it happen. So I guess that's grace. And the longer you practice gratitude, the more you live in grace. And the longer you live in grace, the greater you show love. Because when you're kind of swimming in the pool of grace and you realize God has given me so much that I didn't deserve, there becomes in the green, in a healthy place, there becomes a natural compulsion to then want to give. Now you begin to give out of the overflow and the gratitude of your heart. and you go, can I serve you? Hey, I have a need. Can I help that need? It now comes from a place of gratitude. It comes from a place of being grounded. It comes from a place of being centered. It comes from a place of knowing my identity is in Christ, as opposed to I needed a quick hit to fix my rescuer, or I needed to let off some of the steam by perpetrating. All right, Kevin.
I have a question that kind of speaks into where you're at in this conversation. It is because this is a value of Journey, is to be honest with, so I'm having
Oh, great. What do you want me to talk about?
what is the balance of stating facts as they are and between that and not being a victim and just speaking out of my
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. So if I'm interpreting correctly, it's maybe I want to sit down with my spouse or my friend or my mother or my father and I go, here are the facts.
Yeah.
I would say two things. First of all, the facts are still coming from your perspective. So they may sound to you like hard and fast facts, but they're still coming through the lens of a 4 or a 3 or an 8 or an I or an INFJ. Or so when you go, here are the facts, they're still coming through your grid. And because you're not the holy inspired word of God, there is the possibility that you don't have it exactly right. So when you come, you go, oh, they're just facts. Well, they're still coming through the lens of your own commentary. Now, there is a place to present those facts, but the thing to do is to check in. Just check in where you are. So if you go, well, things aren't right with us. I'd like to have a conversation about it. Well, just check in. Are you coming in with perpetrating rage? Are you coming in with a woe is me? Are you coming in trying to save the day? Or do you go, hey, can we have a conversation? So it may start with that. What is that? It's negotiating. Hey, I have some observations on our interaction. Can we have a conversation negotiating? Okay. And then you go, here's what I'd like to take ownership with me. Now, if you go, oh, there's nothing to take ownership. I'm perfect. Okay, well, you probably just got back on the red. But if you can go, is there anything, because one of the things you might say is, and it's not, because you can fall into rescuer here and disproportionately take responsibility, but it's just being honest enough to go, is there anything you can bring to the table? And enter the conversation and do so with boundaries.
Is it that we are all predisposed to live in the triangle? Are we predisposed to live there?
I think yes, from the fall. As soon as we knew what good and evil were. Before the fall, before we ate of the tree of knowledge and good and evil, there was no polarity. There was no right and wrong. When we ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we now knew polarity. This is right, this is wrong. If you look at all the ancient myths, anybody know the Pied Piper, the nursery rhyme? You know what I'm talking about? The Pied Piper literally goes on all three of these. He comes into town. He's going to be the rescuer. I'll help get rid of all the rats. They screw him. They don't pay him like they're supposed to. And so he's now the victim. And he says to them, okay, wait and see. What does he do? He does his thing in the middle of the night. All the kids go off into a cave, into a mountain, and there's a landslide. They disappear, and the townspeople have lost their children forever. He perpetrated. I mean, like, you can find it in nursery rhymes. You find it in myths. It's everywhere. So I think the answer to that question is yes, it's a baseline example of the flesh.
And that nursery rhyme is one we tell our kids right before bed.
Yeah, right? Usually. Go into your bedroom now, kids. Yeah.
Good night. And if you hear music, don't listen.
Yeah.
No, okay, we digress.
Oh, I have so many comments. Yes.
I know.
Yes.
Focus.
Okay.
What would be the difference between empathy and apathy in regards to the two triangles and how they correlate together?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Most apathy comes from loneliness. So if you're indifferent, you go, if you're in the marriage and you're like, I don't really care. Really, you're probably deeply lonely. So your medicating mechanism is I'm just going to be indifferent. And that's what apathy is. Apathy, by the way, is a form of control. So your apathy could be perpetrating. So let's use indifference. So your silence might be incredibly violent to the other person. You go, well, I didn't say anything. Yeah, and it really hurt that you didn't say anything. So depending on where you are, it might be a form of perpetration. Or it could be victim. Either apathy could be, this marriage is never going to work. It's never going to happen. And you can sit there and just spin the wheels of victimization. So it just goes back to your motive. You got to check in with where's the energy coming from.
Yeah, there's a series of questions that revolve around this idea, okay? The idea is I'm in a marriage that I'm trying to be on the green triangle, the spouse is on the red triangle. There doesn't seem to be any opportunity to move those things. What if you can't resolve it? How do you, in other words, probably how do you help move a spouse or a close friend or to the green triangle with you?
So remember this, definition of codependency is if you're not okay, I'm not okay. So if a lot of your energy is, I got to get that other person into the right triangle. If a lot of that, you got to first check in and go, first of all, where are you? So you're responsible for you, this autonomous person. You go, yeah, but my life will be easier if, okay, but maybe your life wasn't supposed to be easier, and maybe the fact that both of you have been in this red dance for 10 years or 15 years or 6 months is the equivalent of Jesus saying, my pathway to suffering looks like this. And God said, every human being has to go on a pathway of letting their ego die, so this is yours. So I gave you marriage. I think I gave this to you last week. A friend of mine said there are 3 ways to get to know God in a deep way. Live in a monastery, go to prison, or get married, and married might be the hardest of the 3. It's a crucible. Marriage is a crucible. It's exposing your ego all the time. The ego wants to be rewarded, and the ego wants justification and justice. So your ego is getting pounded in marriage. So first and foremost, here, can I be healthy? Can I stay green? Now, legitimately, there may be a place where you go, the other person stays on red. By the way, one of my mentors said, you can live a lifetime on green, you can live a lifetime on red. But it's hard to live a lifetime if you're both separated because there's no syncing up. But I would say this, you're responsible for you, and there are still mirroring neurons, even when we're older. You continue to live in the green, you're going to disrupt the cycle, you're going to agitate it, enough that the other person who's trying to fish and can't get a hook. So the other person has a chance, perhaps, as probably you did, has a chance to then go to their bottom. And I mean, this is where you hear 12 steps. The very first step is to go, I'm powerless to change my circumstances. What happens is if you can stay green, you stop your form of enabling, and that person may have to spiral farther than you do before they hit the bottom and recognize only God can rescue their soul, not you. So that just may be
a way to hold the space while that's taking place that doesn't crush your soul.
It's to stay on the green. So you're going to have to do boundaries. So when the other person is trying to hook you, you may have to set a boundary and go, hey, I can only do this. And then the other person may go back, I really need. And then if you go, well, I got a little healthier, so what previously for me would have been enabling the behavior now can actually be a form of love. Sometimes, by the way, a behavior, the exact same behavior, Doyle taught me this, the exact same behavior might be totally of the spirit or might be totally out of your codependency and same behavior. The issue is the origin. Where is it coming from? So if you're trying to hook your rescuer, it's different than if you're actually, no greater love than this, and man sacrificed his life for a friend. If you actually go, no, I'm not hooking my rescuer. I'm coming to meet your need because I'm in a grounded place. So I'll sacrifice my preferences for you.
Is there a time when you just walk away? Is there a time when the relationship in this isn't going to work?
Yeah.
Whether it's a marriage or whether it's a whatever, is there a moment when you can go, okay, I've tried this green triangle long enough? I guess I'm answering the question, but
I think the issue is one of covenant. So I'm going to answer not out of my own personal opinions. I'm just going to give you my best understanding of Scripture. God calls us to be in covenant with one another, and the covenant is usually not just with one another, it's actually with Him. So if you're in a covenant, marriage is a great example, with someone that you've kind of entered into a promise, that only God releases us from that promise, because He's been involved in it. So the crucible oftentimes you're staying in something that might be dysfunctional or painful or there's a lot of suffering, but you stay in it because the goal is not to be married. The goal is for you to be like Jesus. The goal is for Him to expose the ego. That's the first and foremost goal. Marriage just happens to be the current vehicle. And I say this to people all the time. If you get divorced, it's not the unpardonable sin. God's going to redeem all things and whatever else, but it's usually just a trade-off of pain. So you can get divorced. You just have a different kind of. It's just a different kind of crucible. It's just a matter of which crucible do you want to be in. And a lot of times we don't get to determine that. So I think the bigger question is, am I in a covenant? If I'm not in a covenant, we're just in a friendship, and I go, this relationship is really beginning to affect me, then you just go, I'm going to let it go. I mean, if you're in a friendship, God gives you the freedom, and you walk away, and maybe even circle back after you're both healthier. I think that can happen. But if you're in a covenant, then I think you don't walk away unless God releases you, and you have to listen to the Spirit of God to do that.
How are we?
Oh, we were gone a long time ago.
I thought so.
I just figured you were giving me more time.
Good negotiating.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Okay. I think you nailed most of them.
All right.
There's some we're going to have to write on.
All right.
They're just
this
bigger.
week, Kevin and I we'll do some writing. We'll send some resources, some blogs. Two people who are here that I think if they have a moment, if you want to talk to somebody afterwards, Andrew, you available to talk to anybody if they want to? My wife Angie's here. Doyle, where are you? Doyle's here. Two people who know this probably better than me will both be hanging around here if you want to come talk to somebody at the front, Doyle and Angie. And we'll put some more resources out this week for you. We want to close with a song that speaks to all of this. Would you pray with me?